Welcome back, everybody, to the Shero Spotlight. And I'm beyond excited and honored to have this guest on with us today. She is such a special person. And we actually met at church, and we really got connected when she made me some cardboard guitars. I know that sounds crazy, but we're going to get to that hopefully in a second. So let me tell you a little bit about this wonderful person. She's an award-winning author, illustrator, and international speaker and teacher, and she's the president of Peace Dragon. She shares the powerful skills of view, voice, and choice, and she wants to lead people through more challenging parts of their life with a peaceful and productive outcome. She is thankfully a survivor of the 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack. Her physically devastating wound validated her message of empathy and compassion over retaliation or resentment. And that is such a huge thing that is just so amazing. Her work in peace education has led her around the world, empowering over 37,000 students to see and speak with a new...
Actually, that's an old, so it's over 70,000.
Over 70,000. That's amazing. And she teaches them how to speak with a new voice and expands the capability of choice. These same principles of peace offered her a safe journey through breast cancer, finding treasures with the moments of darkness. And whether the terrorist comes from outside or within, I think I'm going to cry, she believes peace offers a balanced journey through every challenging event. She was recently honored several years ago with a nomination for the Peace Educator Award from El Hebri Foundation. Please welcome my dear friend and inspiring woman of my heart, Linda Ragsdale.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And can I say, right, one of the hardest things that you ever have to do in life is be sitting with someone who knows you and just knows you as friend and as a goofball and everything, to sit there and read, these bio elements of your life. And you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, thank goodness she doesn't know what I did in high school. That's not part of that, right?
Well, the bio is so massive. I mean, I just extrapolated what I wanted to say. But you can definitely go to Linda's website and read her wonderful bio and all her achievements. It's, your mind works like some kind of a steam engine. I think it's like the bullet train in Japan or something. That's how fast your brain goes. Well, I know a lot of the answers to these questions, but a lot of people listening may not know this about you, these things about you. So I thought we would start with the first thing is, what led you to become a peace educator? Because you don't hear somebody calling themselves a peace educator. And I think that's a great moniker.
Well, and let's be clear about that too, because, one of the hardest things about being a peace educator is that everyone applies such a varied and really wild aspect of their ideas onto what peace is. And that's what's really the problem, is trying to identify peace as a valuable, valid aspect of learning and our education process. So when I talk about the Peace Dragon, I'll ask kids, hey, and even adults, what do you think of when you hear the word dragon? And they'll be like, geek, fire, destructive, and then I'll say, how about peace? 2, 3, 4. And someone will say hippies, or they'll throw up the peace sign. And, we don't have an understanding of it. So let me be clear that my understanding of how I teach peace is owning the energies within ourselves and balancing them with the external ones. Because what we have to learn about peace is everything starts with us, right? No one makes you angry. You can say, oh, my mom makes me so angry. Oh, my daughter makes me so. No. You choose to be angry.
That's right. You're responsible for those feelings. Yes.
We have our own fire starters. So how do we learn how to turn that fire into something productive?
Right.
And I had been teaching kids how to own the artistry of their lives through a drawing series of books that I had been doing, and actually in the middle of promoting when I was dealing with 14 years of health issues. And I was diagnosed with lupus first. And then so after 5 years, they moved me to MS. And then after MS, they moved me to fibromyalgia, which at the time I was diagnosed was not a, group oriented, there's validate, right? It was literally, okay, we've got 10 other friends I know. We don't know what to do with them. So we're just going to throw them in this, and we're going to give you these drugs that knock you out. And if you're not in bed when we take them, you might fall on the floor. And, so I was like, you know what?
Wow.
I'm done. I'm done with the drugs. I'm going to trust my body and being. And I fell into meditation. And that brought my body great relief. I mean, I was all these things were just falling away, and I found such comfort in that. Now, it was a guided way. I don't want anyone running out and stopping their medications and everything else.
Right.
All I'm saying is that what I found was that in those moments, I found a greater relief for my physical pain than I did any other way. And then as I started to really invest in that, the opportunity to go to India, which was the birthplace of meditation.
Right.
I could expand upon that. So at the time, I was already teaching kids to own the artistry of your life. It's a blank page. You take the lines forward that you like, leave the rest behind. If there's a spot on your page, don't worry about the spot. Look at the rest of the page, make that spot work within the page. So all the ideas of this were just, for no better purpose, blown onto a new stage. Because one night at dinner on the retreat in India, we who were there to find our own personal peace, 24 people in a group of meditators. I was a baby meditator. Everyone else was 20 years into it. We met with people who came to create destruction and chaos. So at dinner, we met 2 of the 11 terrorists who came in through the restaurant and shot through the whole restaurant. And I'm one of those people who laid on the floor waiting for the gunman to get to our table. There was no place for us to run. There was no place for us to go. And so we had to be the group that played dead. And as I sat there, right, I was laying over a friend. I couldn't get under the table. A father and daughter, Naomi and Alan, got under the table, but my friend was laying out on the side. And so I laid over him, and the way that I was laying, I could see a column. And in that I waited, and I convinced myself that I was looking for this monster, right? That it couldn't be human, because a human couldn't walk into this restaurant that was full of joy and laughter, right? And then all of a sudden, you're in the middle of a round of firecrackers. You're but nobody is worried about themselves as much as we are getting everyone under the table. Are you safe? Are you safe? We had a 13-year-old girl there.
Right.
Our husband was getting her safe. So there's not this idea that you're, running. You are worried about everyone getting under. And as I sat there and Alan said, play dead, I needed to see what was coming. And as the barrel of the gun crossed this marble pole, this column, I was shocked to see a young boy, right? Someone who I related to my own son, who, right, I could see the shape of his face in my own son's face. And my mama's heart just burst outward. It was like, why aren't you at the table with us? How did you get here? Why wasn't I listening? And the 13-year-old girl was the same age as my daughter. So here are my 2 kids. One's at the table and one has to come to speak to me with a gun. And weren't you told you were loved? How did we get here? And why aren't you? And he was wearing khaki pants and a white shirt. And that was what the school uniform was in Tennessee. Not just private schools, but public schools had turned to these uniforms. And here was this kid whose backpack was stuffed with ammunition. Oversized backpack, and his belt was, stuffed with shrapnel. Wait a minute, you should be having a belt that holds up your pants only. Your backpack should be filled with books. I would have been asking you, who's your favorite teacher? What do you want to draw? How do you, there were these questions. And when I put my head down before he totally turned the corner and saw that I could see, or that I was alive, and I thought I heard 3 shots, but it was literally just the beginning. I was hit. The bullet entered, because I was facing him, it entered from my back. It entered above my heart, traveled a 1/4 inch down my spinal column, went through, nicked my stomach, and exited out the top of my thigh. And when I
Unreal.
awoke, right, it actually seems like a very bizarre, and you say that, right? It's unreal. I've actually been in front of students telling a story, and someone will say, "Is this real?" And you're like, "Wow, who is coming and talking to you?" Right?
And I remember when I found out that you had gone through this, I could not believe it. I mean, I was like, what? It's just, it's unbelievable. And the way you're telling that, and it's always really struck me and stuck with me how you talked about him with the white shirt and the khaki pants, about him being like your son's age. That really struck me.
But it was every student, right? So here at this table, we had a universal family.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi's father, me, right? Not of blood, but of universal family blood. So here was a child who was coming to us, who couldn't speak to us, right? But anything with a gun. So how did we get to a place where two people had never had a conversation?
Right.
In that short amount of time, I teach view, voice, and choice. In that short amount of time, I was looking for a monster, all in my head. Before I put my head down and I looked at that child, and he was darting around as if we were in a restaurant. We had butter knives. We didn't have guns. We weren't in a war zone. We were in a restaurant. But he was scared. The man with the gun and the ammunition and all of this was scared. And when I put my head down, I realized that I was his monster. So here we've got two people looking at each other and seeing monsters. There's a lens that has been put to us that is not real, this illusionary lens that when dropped, we would see human to human.
Right.
In that same moment, right, of spans of time before I got out of there, the voices that I heard, the young man who was speaking with the gun, the two young boys who called out after the gunman left and said, "If you can come here now." Kids who should have run for their lives. The people who say, "I am there for you no matter what." Naomi taking her last breath on this planet to sit there and hear a child whose future was just ahead of her. She just found out she had gotten these scholarships to go off to a school and everything. This child's life ended. That child's life has ended.
Right.
The voices, right? Silenced voices. And the voice in my head that said, "Yes, I wanted to live." And the voice that said, what story will you take out of this room? And then finally getting to a place, right? Making it to the doorway of that kitchen before the gunman came back again, and to get in, right? To walk through a doorway, right? To get to a place where we eventually walk, right? To get to a doorway out of that kitchen. So walking from a Hades type of scape into a heaven, right? Into a silent, beautiful night. Where will you stay? The question of, you have the right, you can live in this room for the rest of your life, or I'm showing you this beautiful starlit night.
Right.
As your option. But you can't discard that you have been in that room. So the question is, what will you take out of that?
Yes.
So the choice, right? And the story. If I come out with the anger and the hatred that young man was told to bring in, what's the difference between the two of us?
Right. That it's an amazing, amazing amount of grace to me there's so many people that probably would have never, I don't know. I don't know many other people that have been through that kind of an experience. I don't know anybody else except somebody that's been, my father fought in World War II. That's the only other person I know that's been in a life changing, life altering kind of experience like that. So I'm just grateful that you survived and grateful that you turned it into that. Your takeaway, became something that could help people.
But don't you think it's always the way it is, right? That we see these bigger things to only get to the smaller things.
Yeah.
So when you see two kids fighting, right? So when I teach peace, one of the things I say is don't pick up the fire. And,
Right.
I'll ask, who makes you angry? Who makes you angry? And they'll say, oh, my mom makes me angry. My dad, my brothers, my sisters,
Right.
my dog, whatever it is. And I was like, no, I'm going to ask you again. Who decides you will be angry? And the answer is always you will. So when we own the anger that starts within us, we also know that we don't have to apply that anger, that we can sit with it, understand it, and remold it so that it becomes a passionate request that says, hey, that really hurt my feelings, right? We don't have to come back with fire. So if you come yelling at me, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I yell back at you, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Who's wrong here? We both picked up the fire. We both got fire. There's no difference. But if you come at me that way and I go, whoa, are you all right, Kirsti?
Yeah.
Whatever propelled you there is being stopped, sent back to you lovingly.
Yeah.
That says, I care about you. This is not like you. We change the trajectory of that fire into a compassion, and it stops the aggression of that moment into a moment that's like, and someone may turn around and say, blah, 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 and they'll go and sit with it. But the idea that you have thrown back love is always the option that we have. And we're never taught that. So let's start teaching it. We don't have to pick up the fire. So one of the first things is don't pick up the fire. Yeah, it's easy.
I can see your mission of wanting to reach as many kids as possible with that kind of a message, and something, you said this earlier in your story about the attack. I always think that about these kids that get pulled into these situations where they're, asked to create havoc and chaos and terror and all that kind of stuff. I always think, man, when they were born, they were this little baby, this little helpless baby. They were a kid kicking a ball around in a yard or in the street or something. I always think about that. And I think how different kids' lives are and how they get led to something like that. So I'm really glad that you've been able to touch so many kids in this way.
Well, if we can stop the fires from starting, right, you have to go through and this is a really big sort of idea to it. But when someone comes along and says, I want you to go and kill all the Jews, let's take Hitler. What if everyone said, oh my gosh, let's go to the temple, let's sit, let's go learn, let's go, right? What if everyone said no to that?
Right.
What if everyone said no to everyone? And I know that, the political, we can go through all of the things, but the idea is even within our own lives, we can stop those trajectories by literally saying, I'm not. So when we see friends that we know, right? Even as adults, we'll see friends and they'll call us up. Oh, do you know what she did? And blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're going to buy into that argument, you're going to say, oh, I know. She's always been that way, blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden you start to get your army, and then it comes back to her that you've been talking about her. So she's on the other side, getting the other side of your friends, and you've collected this. So now, you and I can't talk because you've chosen her, right? And what if the first person you called up, right? What if someone calls, I called you up and I said, oh my gosh, my sister died. She's such a blah, 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 right? But then you would turn around and say, gosh, Lynn, Di's such a lovely person. What's going on here?
I've never seen her that way.
No, but you know what I'm saying? That we literally become the peacemakers in that moment. That we say, no, I think you guys, right, you need to sit with this because something obviously, and go talk to her. If she's done something, she probably doesn't even know.
Well, I don't think it's that, people always act like relationships are so complicated, but I really don't think they are. I think relationships between people, I think all that kind of stuff is very simple, and I also think with social media, like when we were kids, we didn't have social media. We would just work things out, things could cool off because you didn't see somebody for 15 hours or something. You saw them the next day in school. That's not how it is now. Everybody knows that every second by second what somebody's thinking or doing or saying. And I think it's detrimental because it's not real.
Well, and the other thing is there's two things. We aren't really, really taught to tell the whole truth. So if I'm telling a story about a friend that I'm in a fight in, I'm going to take this slice of pie and I'm going to leave out all the details that leave out my iffy behavior, right? I'm only going to show you this piece of pie because this is right. And ultimately, that's the element that's something within me has been ignited. So
Yeah.
instead of literally looking at all the other stuff in which I am complicit, that I can turn around to you or whoever I'm in a fight with, I flip flop, but that I turn to the person who I'm in a fight with and saying, gosh, that really hurt my feeling. I love purple. And if I want my hair purple, how does that infringe upon, right? That we literally don't have the conversations that create the space for us to be openly wonderful to each other.
Right.
And I think that's where we have to learn to start by speaking love to ourselves, right?
Oh, that's so true. Well, and I think too, it's all those little simple things like my mother taught me, truth and grace. It's like whenever I have to say for myself, and of course I'm part Italian, so we're just born with fire, but at any rate, I have to honestly say that when I get in situations like that, I say to myself, grace, Kirsti, grace, grace, Kirsti, grace. That's kind of how I taught myself off the ledge, but I've done that for a long time. And it never works out perfectly, but it helps. But go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say too, right? So the one place I joke with kids when I go, or anybody, right? I was like, I teach peace. Do you think I ever get mad? Of course I do, right? Because we're human. And that's one of the emotions that we feel. And it tells us that something is wrong within us. Not something is wrong within someone else, but something is wrong within us, that imbalance has started. So I find myself really voicey, right? Gratefully enclosed in my own vehicle, telling other people how unhappy I am with the way that they're driving. So
That's hilarious.
on my car, I have a glass heart. And it reminds me, right? It reminds me that I have been there, right? Like I sing in my car, and there are times when I hit those high notes very horribly, but I hit them and I will close my eyes and it's like, oh, I've got to get off the road. Maybe that person is just as silly as me, and maybe they're just as frightened as me. I have no sense of direction whatsoever. So if I don't know where I'm going, if I don't see something and, I veer off into a lane, it's because I'm looking, right? Maybe they're just as frightened of being not exiting or not knowing where they are. And there's this discomfort that we have to have grace, because I can't talk to you in that other car.
Right. Well, and something you just said too is interesting. I think that the world, because again, with social media, and trust me, I love it. Don't get me wrong. But I think that because we can see so many things, it is frightening. The world's frightening. There's a lot of stuff about the world that can be frightening. There's stuff about, you're 2 streets away that can be frightening. Okay. Everybody goes through things, but I think that messes with your grace, being frightened, because people always feel like they got to be on guard. I don't know what so-and-so's thinking, or, this kind of thing. So but the thing about looking at yourself, and that's one thing you were talking about meditation. That's one thing that I think meditation practice really does, is it really, if you really can make yourself meditate and sit and meditate and go quiet, you really can find some things out about yourself if you're willing to face them.
And one of the greatest ways to sort of start this, right, that sort of big challenge, is to sit there and just sort of close your eyes and tell yourself that you love you, right? To really expand upon that and to feel comfortable with that. Because if you don't love yourself, then the question is, what is preventing you from getting to that love? Because when you have those barriers up, then you won't be able to give that out. And that goes along with, if you are in this ever protective mode, then you're tossing out all this errant energy as well. So when we look at this, what energy are we putting out into this world? So if all that fear is there, are we gathering with our neighbors and creating that fear? Or are we gathering with our neighbors and saying, I'm so glad you're my neighbor. I'm so glad you're here. The energy that we put out into this world is certainly reciprocated. So why aren't we putting out bigger love energy than bigger hate energy?
Right.
And those becomes, what are you giving a voice to? And that's a question you always have the choice.
And the other thing too, is that, we're all, I learned this when I left the country and I went and played gigs in Japan. And that's been many years ago, but you learn that, people are different, but they're the same. There's things about us that are so different, and there's things about us that are so the same. And I'm not even going to use the word celebrate it. I don't even mean to go there. I just mean, recognize it, accept it, understand, tolerate, whatever word you want to use. I really think that that's something that we all need to, it's like, if we're talking about, oh, you don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and I do, that's an okay thing to have a conversation with. But when it gets a little bit heavier or something more emotional, then it's like you're talking about having the sides, and oh, that is so excruciating when people try to pull you into things like that. It's really tough. Like, why can't I just like her purple hair and I like it? It's her hair. She could do what she wants with her hair.
And if I don't like it, why can't I allow and accept it?
Exactly. Exactly.
It is the question of why do we, right? And that becomes that inner perspective. Why does her purple hair bother me that much? Right. And then it might be because I'm not, right? Because I'm not bold enough to do that to my own hair.
Right.
Or
that's fine.
Because no one will take her seriously, and peace is serious. There may be wonderful aspects to it. I'm not trying to apply a lens to it, but I'm just saying that it is a lens that you are applying onto my being, and the question is why.
It's really interesting. And back to the meditation thing, I mean, that I believe that, I'm going to say Americans because I'm an American, I believe Americans don't spend enough time being quiet. It's like when I was a kid and you'd go to church, and I could never understand sometimes, why are we sitting like this so quietly? Because I think people, okay, we're going to get this group of people into church. We're going to force you to be quiet. Now listen. And I really think that people don't listen to themselves, and they don't spend enough being quiet. And that's why I'm always encouraging people to meditate or practice yoga or take a walk or turn their phone off for 3 hours or whatever it is, because you learn. And the thing that changed my life was taking acting class, this one master class. I studied with this coach for 3 years, and it really woke me up in that way because it made me really look in, it changed my artistic life. It truly did.
And we become ageless when you do that,
Mm-hmm.
because the emotions that you have are of awe, are of love, are of, wow, that's so cool. I don't get that, but tell me more, right? That we become more curious about each other,
right.
and trying to understand this vast part of the world that we may not parlay in, but we should be in and getting in and introduced to. And, for me, it's coloring and drawing dragons and creating. That aspect of it to me is that peaceful part of it. It is so the mindfulness can be in taking a walk. If you don't want to sit, go take a walk and take your camera and take pictures of the colors of the leaves. Take pictures of even the decay, because there's beauty even in the cycle of life that allows us to watch as spring settles in, right? And becomes that really quiet season before spring comes out and says, I'm new.
I'm purple. I'm yellow. I'm orange.
I'm purple. I'm blue.
Well, and the thing too that I think is interesting when you were talking about going out, taking a walk and taking pictures is, we're so consumed, I think sometimes, with all these things that we think that we have to do. And, when you take time to be quiet, you start to think about the things that you really want to do. And that was a real awakening for me when I really started to look at myself in that way. It's like, and I always do that at the end of the year. It's kind of like my inventory on my year. It's like, what have I done that really was meaningful to me, that I think is important, that is speaking to me? What is giving my heart? Here I go. We're pointing at our hearts. What is it? What is it that's giving my heart the joy? And what isn't? And then having the guts to let go of the stuff that truly isn't. And sadly, sometimes it's letting go of some people that are mucking it up for you too, the crazy makers of your life. I mean, you have to be real about these things, because we only have so many seconds in our life. And you have to think about, what am I going to do with these seconds? What's important? But then it's good to waste time sometimes and just relax. I'm not saying that isn't important too.
Is it right? But we label it as waste of time, but is it?
Yeah.
Because in that dawdling, there is that joy. In that, I am just going to lay here and do nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that joy of that.
Yeah.
And we do. I have been working on a project right now, and it is very in depth and personal. And I had to look at why I was feeling this sort of stagnation, right?
Mhm.
And I had to come to this epiphany that, oh, okay. I am still in dealing with getting caught up in busy. I'm always doing something. I'm always working on something. But when I get it, even when I get it done and it's ready to present, I don't. And so the perspective that I understood is, when it is in this zone, I can tell you, oh, here's what I've got, and look at this, and here's this, and you can critique it at a level of, oh, that's really cool. You're always so busy. I get these lauds, but it doesn't get tested, and therefore I never have to deal with what might not be working in a program. But it was this protective mode of being appreciated for being busy and doing these things, but never doing it to the end, to fulfilling it, and coming to the realization of, I love the creativity, I hate the marketing.
Yeah. Well, and that is so true for artists, I think. I mean, I just mean a drawing artist. I mean, people that are creatively, and that I'm speaking to everybody who's listening to this podcast, because I believe we're all creative beings. And some of us just have had the opportunity or created the opportunities to make those kinds of things happen. And other people are still trying to figure out how to do that. That's great. I'm glad you're here and you're listening. But I really think that that's true. It's that the creating part is the journey of it. It's waking up, peeling the onion layers of it. And oh, I like this line and I'm going to fix it because I think I thought of something better, and that kind of thing. I totally agree with that.
Right. And I think that when we get that product, it is, as they all say, it is your child, it is your, right. And so here it is, you're sort of, will they like, and we should give it so freely and right. But then there's that point of, how do I talk about it and get the distance that I feel safe about it? Because this isn't about me. This is about you.
Yeah.
And we don't, right. And we find that difficult because people want to be attached to things, and that's not what creativity is.
Right.
It is the gift that we've made, and we don't want, right. If I want to talk to you about it, I want you to talk about this. I want to talk about peace. I want to talk about this. Although my life story, surviving, 3-foot machine gun bullet wound, and then surviving stage 3 breast cancer, and then, holding my husband most recently in his passing, these moments, right, that become a focal point of distraction, right? And I would use that to amplify peace, but that's not what I want you to do. I want you to see yourself with love and the world with love. I want you to speak to yourself and the world with love, and I want you to make choices from a cool and calm heart. I want you to feel that love so deep that it never changes, right? It never switches the needle of that heart for you. I don't want to talk about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I even said that when we started this, the discomfort of hearing what you've done, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of that, and there's that spiritual, and then if you've got to put a price to it, oh my gosh, now I've got to label myself.
Well,
right?
I think what it is too, it's like, it's the thing you said about being busy. When you're doing a lot of things, I mean, I can speak for myself. When I'm doing a lot of different things, and I'm doing them because it makes me happy and it's what I want to do. And then if somebody started reading a list of all the things, you're like, wow, because you just do it because you want to do it. You want to create this thing. You want to try this path. And those are your endeavors. And so you don't think about that it's some kind of a CV that somebody's going to read aloud someday on a podcast. You know what I mean? Though it makes you feel funny. I know exactly what you mean.
Right? It does. And so, the thing is, I see things differently. I saw drawing as, everybody's so frightened of this white page. I can show you how to draw a dragon, right? I can take a question mark. I can take J's and C's, and you will draw a dragon and you will love it. I guarantee you. Give me just a minute, because all the strokes of this. And, when I was faced with, this moment after being shot, this darkest part of humanity, I want you to see something different out of that moment. When I got told that I had, stage 3 breast cancer, funny thing was, a week before all of this, or 2 weeks ahead of all of this and going through it, I was in Japan teaching 8 to 12-hour days. I had cancer then. I didn't just magically, cross into the United States border and get cancer. I had it for a long time. And so the difference was, here I was doing everything for 12 hours a day with cancer. And here comes a day that I find out I have cancer. What's the difference? Well, it's the difference that I give the word cancer into my life. And so I wanted to show women that we don't have to be afraid of that word. As a matter of fact, we have to understand that word and then look to ourselves, because who knows our body better than ourselves?
Right.
And we can tell a doctor what's going to be good for us and what's not. And I was an advocate for myself and literally changed doctors in the middle and found doctors who knew what I was looking for and answered the questions and really understood the path. And I didn't end up doing 2 of the more difficult sections of this cancer treatment. Now, 10 years from now, it might be, but 5 years I'm out and I'm doing okay.
That's fantastic.
So it was what was right for me.
Right.
And so we have to be able to get to that place where, well, anyway, I want us to do that. And how do we let even ourselves, how do we get to the point where we can talk about things and not have someone also, like pick up something, right? So you go through this whole thing to teach peace and do and be, and then someone says to you, oh, I could never be like you. I'm just trying to tell you, you are like me. You just have to look at things a little differently. Yes. You just have to put a different voice to something, right?
The other thing too is that, we forget the thing about not worried about being like anybody. I was brought up to think like this, though, that you're uniquely you and you just be the best you can be. And not everybody is taught that, and not everybody thinks that, and not everybody has a confidence level that can take them there. That part is complicated. Okay. But I think that, that by being who we are and being a big light and being inspirational is a real gift to people. I mean, I looked at all the things that I can do and that I've done. And I really believe, for me, that one of the biggest gifts I was given from God is that I am an inspiring person. I really believe that about myself.
You are full of loving energy. Well,
it can be anywhere. Be inspiring. You can be inspiring in, the produce section, for crying out loud, so I just really embrace that. But
and it's true. And your work with children, right? In the music that you did for that, there was the joy that came out of your expressions of that, the complete silliness of it, but also the seeds of information that were planted. And so the same thing with my children's books that have that scope to it. Just like you were talking about, I want to give kids all that base because they do compare, because we make them compare. Right? One of these things is not like the other. Why? No. So the book, one of the first books that was that won the name, which is the National Association of Multicultural Book Awards, was Not Opposites. And it's the whole little mantra of that is not better, not worse, not opposites, just different.
Yeah.
It's just different. No big deal. It's just different. It's part of all the puzzle, all the pieces that make this great picture beautiful.
Right.
It's not the piece. It's not, I want to be a border piece, right? That all of the pieces together are vital to make this picture, this beautiful picture, come together.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. We get a choice to be an inspiration, or we get to choice to be an anchor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's true. Well, this, we could do a 5-part series. I'm going to have you back. It's always so great to talk to you. And we've had some fantastic conversations. I look at what do you mean we've been here for 4 hours? And I'm kidding. But I always ask my guests these next 2 questions. And I think I know yours, but I want to hear what you have to say. What's your power word or phrase?
Love.
I knew you would say that.
It is. Love is my superpower. And I want everyone to own that. Love changes everything.
Yeah.
Love changes everything, especially when we give it to ourselves.
Yeah. That's such great advice. I love
right?
that. And go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I think that that's vital because too many times we do something that we think that we should be forever labeled and shamed and, not worthy. And I love you even when you make a mistake. I love you because you learn from that mistake. I love you because you're growing. And I love you because, just because.
Yeah.
Because you want to be. And I think that that's, you're talking about grace. Give yourself love and grace.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And you were talking about a new Facebook page you want to start as something about gratitude. So finish this sentence. My number one thing I'm most grateful for today is
you.
Oh, thank you.
Please don't tell me that's the standard answer too.
No, it's not.
Okay. But it is, right? It's the ability to connect in this world via any way that we can and be able to share ideas and speak and laugh and be able to talk about things that are important to us and be heard and felt like we're being heard.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Validated. Validate yourself and the world will validate you. That's what I think.
And in that it's that all, right? It'll be, going and talking to the person who checks you out at a cash register. And unfortunately, nowadays you're like this, but that they can hear the smile and see the smile in your eyes and that you say, oh, I love that pin on your jacket, or thanks for this. How's your day going? That you see them and you feel, they feel felt, they feel heard, you feel heard. You want them to know they're appreciated. So you, in all the levels that you're going out and making everyone feel like they have a place and a voice to come and speak, to be heard, and for you being that voice out there that says, hey, come here and listen.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to try to be engaging with people. I like to engage. I mean, just my personality, but I think it's important to do that. And especially now with everything that we're going through, and especially with people being so hung up on social media, I think that a lot of people have gotten less engaging, one-on-one, or, I don't want the world to become socially inept. I want people to be able to talk to each other.
And I think that as the world keeps going, that yes, those face-to-face will be far more vital for us. And I know we're closing up, but there was a great book called I think it's called The I Brain. And it really did talk about the fact that when we do virtual and the text and the boldness that people have, that you would never say that to my face, but you'll put it in all bold caps and slam it
put it out to the world for the world to read.
So I'm publicly humiliated in places. That isn't what it is. It's, you know what? I'm going to call you right now, since you put this on there. I'm going to get on the phone with you and let's have this conversation. That we are missing the levels of intonation. Text doesn't have voice. Yes, you may put it in all caps, but then I'm going to misread what you're saying, because if I'm angry at you, I'm going to put an angry ear to what I read.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a perfect example. One of my sons, I wrote, hey, are you coming home to dinner? And unknowingly, I hit something that cap locked, right? So my thing went out, are you coming home to dinner? Which to him was, are you coming home for dinner? Right? Yeah. Me, in my head, are you coming home for dinner? I want to have you a nice hot meal. I want to make sure it's ready when you get home, And he wrote back this, right? And I'm looking at my two other kids and I like, have you talked to so-and-so today? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, look what he just wrote back. And they looked at me and they're like, you put it in all caps. Like, it's text, right? But that's what we do. We are applying things that normal face-to-face. I see your eyes. I see your hurt. I see your tear. I see the droop in your face. I see you. The emotions, the physicals, all of the things that are communication skills are falling away within a virtual concept, especially text. Especially.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much, Linda, for being here today. And I know people can go and look for you at thepeacedragon.com. Isn't that your website, thepeacedragon.com?
Right, peacedragon.com.
They can go see all the wonderful things.
And connect with me. Say hello. I love talking. So yeah, let's.
You're kidding me. You love talking.
I'm so quiet. I rarely.
I know. Just come, if you'd ever come out of your shell, man, it would really be something. Well, I love you dearly, and it was so great to see you. And thanks for having the time, making the time to be on the show. Everybody, don't go away. We're going to be right back.